I'm rolling my sweet babies on, rolling my sweet babies on. Lay around the shack till they'll train me back, rolling my sweet babies on. Oh, where were you last Friday night while I was lying in jail? You were walking the street with nothing, go my man.
We are going to the Sankofa Farmers Market. Does anyone know what the word Sankofa means? It means to return back and gather. So the idea is that we live in a modern society, and if we have the chance to reach back and fetch the most important knowledge from our ancestors, we can bring that to where we live now and carry it with us. To know how to grow food takes years and years of relationship to land. And so when that chain is broken, that knowledge chain is broken, it takes a long time to rebuild it. So I think that there has to be kind of an intergenerational connection that allows us to pass on knowledge that is at risk of disappearing. My name is Johanna Gilligan, and I am founder and co-director of the Grow Dat Youth Farm. We hire teenagers on our site here in City Park to grow food, 60% of which is sold and 40% of which is donated to residents who wouldn't normally have access to organic fresh produce. I started seeing all of these links between employment and health and school. Their only job opportunities were in the fast food sector. It just seemed like a really dehumanizing first job and a really missed opportunity because they were basically just working jobs that were not valuing them or their skills.
Just bring a lot of the youth together. It's really been bad, and it's just a great chance to get out the streets and do something productive and get paid for it and still have fun.
$6.50 worth of produce and I give you a $10 bill. How much change do I get?
$3.50.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be outside actually farming, and I'm very environmental, so it was something exciting. Like right now I'm currently growing a tomato plant in my backyard, and I don't think I would ever be able to do this if it wasn't for this program, because I wouldn't have the knowledge. This is more than a job, because I feel like they actually they nurture us. They put more effort and time into it than I feel like what they really need to do. So I guess their interest in us and wanting to see us rise and prevail is something I really appreciate.
The wonderful thing about food is its unique capacity for everyone to connect to it. It makes it a great tool for social change and organizing.
I'm used to being in nature. I always like to be outside instead of in my house. I do anything but politics and work at any fast food restaurant. I wish people knew how hard it was to actually make the food and the actual price it should be. It actually costs way more if you consider how much work it took to grow the food and how much it costs to bring it to certain places.
I think another big piece of sustainability is healing divisions in our society that don't allow us to want to support one another. In the South, that's very obvious. Still dealing with a lack of investment in certain communities because people see those communities as other than them. So I think if you're looking to change a food system in your community, it has to begin with building linkages between individuals, between organizations that have a central goal of equality.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
Morning, y'all. How you doing, baby? Where you at, bruh? How's your mom and them? Slow food, huh? Slow that. Yeah, you're right. You heard me? I'm Gary Granata. I'm chair of Slow Food New Orleans, and welcome to the conference. Glad you came here. And thank you so much for coming, because that meant I could ride my bike here today. We have first-timers here. First time in New Orleans. Oh, yeah. There we go. There we go. You're experiencing what I call Alice's tumble down the rabbit hole. My first one was 23 years ago, 1991 New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. I grew up in Alabama, not far from here. I was in the beginning of my PhD studies in sports nutrition and exercise sciences, and went, I grew up 4 hours from this place, and I'm just now discovering it. The festival is an amazing place, and you get exposed to New Orleans culture. Not only the music, but all Louisiana culture. And I stumbled into the food demonstration tent my first day. And there's jazz singer Charmaine Neville, daughter of Charles Neville, the Neville brothers, the saxophone player. And she is doing her age-old family recipe of apple and peach cobbler. And actually comes off the stage and hands it to me. And I'm like going, this is magic. So for those of you that have been in a PhD program, it's not when, it's an if you finish. And I was like, if I ever finish this thing, I should just try to get a gig in New Orleans and get a shotgun, which is what we call our houses, around the fairgrounds, and I've got it made. Well, that happened, And yeah. But I grew up in academe, and my father had been a department chair and all that for 40 years. So after a few years in academia, I was like, no, this isn't for me, but New Orleans is. So, and I was fortunate to still have my house, but there was a little thing in the back of my mind. I still wanted to have that sports science career. So I was starting to get offers from around the country, because I have both the sports science and nutrition. And I was about to pack up and leave, because my house pays for itself. So I had the ultimate Jazz Fest vacation place. And I could go to Colorado and be a sports scientist. I got that offer as I was boarding up my house. That would have been August 28th, 2005. And got out to Colorado, and when I heard I'd get back to my house, which didn't flood, I was like, no. Even though this was 2 or 3 times more money than I'd ever made in academia, I had to come back. And I just basically started cooking in the street. I called my restaurant Chez Prius. Richard actually hired me to be chef at the farmer's market for a little while, and things were starting to pick up, and then I had to go home and take care of my father for a few years. So 2 years ago, I was back here full time, starting to kind of bounce around, took over one of the plots at Holly Grove. Some of you guys will visit there. And then the opportunity to do some food demonstrations at the Bayou Boogaloo came up. I'm like going, wow. So I get to kind of pay forward what Charmaine introduced me to 20-some years ago. And then I took a vacation, as we tend to do, because it gets hot here in the summer. And I was in New York. Before I go any further, I'd just like to say I like to say the patron saint of New Orleans is serendipity. I just happened to walk into the office in Brooklyn and go, what's up? I'm like going, well, not really knowing what had just happened in the previous few weeks. And they said, well, we need leadership in New Orleans. I'm like going, okay, I'll do it. Came down here, put together a board, we had a fabulous partnership with the New Orleans Musicians Assistance Foundation that funds the New Orleans Musicians Clinic, free health care for our musicians. They're actually going to be paying for some of our entertainment at the Boogaloo tomorrow night. We launched the chapter on October 1st, and then I got on a plane and went to Italy. My grandparents from Italy, that was my first trip there. I get to Torino, jump on a train, go to Bra. Elisa DeMichelis meets me. My life had paralleled slow food. I'd been a nutritionist for 25 years. My mother grew up on a farm in Iowa, so I've been gardening and cooking since I was 6 or 7 years old. But I'd been a member, but I'd never really been involved. So I'm like going, well, I should probably learn something about this. So I actually downloaded Carlo Petrini's book to read on the way over. I finished it as I was pulling into the train station in Bra, and before I know it, Lisa's taking me down this cobbled street, and there we are at the Osteria Boccum Divino for my very first meal in Italy. And Paolo De Croce hosted me to lunch, and he started talking about how great it was to have New Orleans back on board, because the future of slow food, as he was saying, is in the United States, the youth of the United States. And how can we have a movement in the United States without New Orleans? And basically planted the seed, when can we come to New Orleans? And I went, well, I just did these cooking demos at a festival, and the festivals of Louisiana are how you get introduced into our culture. And then during Salone del Gusto, I just kept on kind of saying that, not thinking anybody was paying attention to me, because unless there was a test, nobody's ever listened to me, you know. And I get back here, still in the glow from Salone, and start thinking about planning the Boogaloo, and then I get a call from Jovan. Do you want to host it this year? I'm like, what? Oh, wait, we may come, just wait a little bit. And then a couple months later, I get a call from Richard saying, there's going to be an announcement in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow, or the New York Times, that you're going to be interested in. I'm like, okay. So it was still great, but wait, don't do anything yet. And then finally, we had our first planning meeting on Ash Wednesday, so we pulled this together in 2 months. So we're so happy, but, well, thank you. But as Jenny was like going crazy, I'm like going, Jenny, we just did the Super Bowl in the middle of Mardi Gras. This is literally a picnic for us, so. But I do welcome you here. You're going to have a fabulous time. This is a magical and tragic place. You just watch the video on Grodat. The farmer Leo Gorman, that was his social aid and pleasure club where the shooting was Sunday. And I had just left before that happened. But as this is also a magical place, last night there was a second line in Conga Square where we'll talk more about the importance of Conga Square, because that's where slaves had Place de Negra back in the 1700s, open air markets, and they could actually buy their freedom. The Dalai Lama came to that second line last night. Yeah. So you're going to learn, we're going to have Mardi Gras Indians at the tent. You're going to learn a saying, bao, we don't bow down. I love how slow food leads with taste, because that kind of completed that meal at Osteria Bocandivino. Kind of brought me full circle from all my studies in nutrition to like, it has to taste good. But we will not bow down. So get ready for a great weekend. It is now my honor to introduce Catherine Domling. She is the chair of the board. I've recently met her. Again, I'm new to slow food, so you guys probably know more about her than me. But welcome to New Orleans, and we'll see you at the Boogaloo tomorrow. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I kind of like this. We had Louisville, then we had Terra Madre, and then we have this, like going from years of not seeing each other. I like this. I like this sort of regularity of looking out and seeing you all. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for the welcome. Thank you to all of you for coming. And thank you for the people on the ground in New Orleans, and thank you to the staff of Slow Food USA. Can the staff please stand? And the interns and the volunteers and the helpers. As Gary said, this was pulled together fairly quickly, and these staff have done an unbelievable job in bringing us here and creating, with your help, the kind of content and just activities that we're going to get to do over the next few days, and it's exciting. So, as many of you have heard me, you know how much I like to speak off the cuff. Today I actually wrote a speech, and I'm actually committed to delivering it, so you'll have to bear with me in my pauses as I go back and forth to my notes. So there's so many thank yous. I could spend my entire time up here thanking everyone. But I also want to welcome there's a small special group of people in the room who were board members of years gone by of Slow Food, who put in years building the organization that we now continue to work and evolve. So I would like you to know that there are board members, quite a few here, who we invited to come back for this moment in time for Slow Food, to meet Richard, to have conversations with you, to see this place. And Alice Waters is here, Peter DeGarmo, Lynn Eve, Jeff Roberts, Michael Dimmick. They're wonderful, wonderful people who have built this organization, and through our highs and lows and ups and downs. So thank you very much for being here and joining us and helping us reflect and not forget where we came from and how we move forward. So special thanks to them. So many of us gathered in Louisville just a little over a year ago. It was with a meeting with lots of potential, lots of amazing conversations. It was put on with great care by the leaders in Kentucky and, again, our staff. But ultimately, it was a beginning of a really big transformation. It was a meeting at the apex of a lot of unmet expectations, some confusion, a lack of focus from the national office. So while it was a convening and a gathering, it came with its challenges for all of us, and some of us weren't quite aware of to the degree of those. So I want to thank all 200 of you for your resilience and for being here and for coming back and for trusting that focus or that lack of focus and that confusion is starting to find its way out. There are 200 of you here, which is a bigger group than we had. We've had a lot of regional meetings this year, and you still came out. That says something to me. You're representing 75 plus chapters. There are many, over a dozen youth chapters represented here, and I know how Slow Food on Campus chapters, and it's finals time, it takes money and time to get here, and it's a huge commitment. And not everyone can be here, and I'll talk about that later, but again, thank you now to you all for coming, for being resilient, and for showing up again. So. I also want to welcome and thank you Elisa and Serena, who are here from Italy. And they have worked more closely with us in the last year than I think for many years before, and it is showing in all ways. I had a moment in the board meeting yesterday where I said, for years, Paolo would come in and we'd have this sort of, what is SFI and how do we fit into the big picture? Incredible conversation and talk, but it was sort of like, do we really have to have this conversation at every board meeting? No, we are this. This is what we live and breathe. And at yesterday's board meeting, I made a note of looking around and saying, we didn't have that because the conversation and discussion and approach to our future was so linked that it didn't bear mentioning and having a sort of separate. So, Elisa, will you share that with Paolo? He would be very pleased. So thank you both for coming, and I look forward to all that we're going to learn and exchange with you over the next few days. So I'm going to talk a little bit about resilience and about why slow food and why now. When we reached out to many of you on the inside, I think of you on the inside, during the leadership transition and during the late summer and early fall of last year, we heard a lot of things. I won't go into all the things we heard. We also reached out to partners, could be partners, should be partners, erstwhile partners, people who have known and been a part of slow food in some way and are sort of bigger names or big well-known names in the food movement. Raj Patel, Michael Pollan, Alice, lots of people you know. And there was a lot of us on the board made these phone calls and talked to people, took the opportunity during this time of change to listen and ask about their hopes and dreams for slow food. And their hopes and dreams, those were words that came over and over back to us about their sort of understanding, or sort of, it was more of a feeling of our critical role in this messy, complicated, ever-growing movement. And I was stunned, being on the inside with the fairly difficult, challenging times, to talk to these people who didn't know so much about the nitty-gritty, but felt that slow food played this unique role. And why do you think they think that? They don't think that particularly because of the national office in New York. They think that because of you. They think that because people join us all over the country, all over the world, doing very specific regional things with passion. We're building community, economy, biodiversity, tradition, taste. We're making people aware of the morally compromised practices that have been created in the name of convenience and low cost. And you are doing that in your ways all over the country, and you're embracing that joy and the justice that's embedded in that work. And that is, I'm quite sure, why when we talk to those people, that they think slow food has something special. Because all around the country, you're doing that without any compensation. So I think it's time to give you another hand. So, as I've said, it was an interesting, challenging, pivotal year. And you've been doing your work all along, kind of moseying, and not more than moseying, in a lot of places doing immense amount of work. Think about the work in Denver and the school gardens and the way we're scaling that up and looking to the field to learn how to do these things. And I think of the last year in particular, a little bit as kind of one of the big Lego constructions I make with my 6-year-old. Actually, he does most of the making. I do most of the looking for parts. And, you know, hundreds and hundreds of parts. And sometimes I think that in the last year, when I think of the slow food community network in the US a little bit as one of the structures that we haven't quite, some of the pieces aren't quite connected yet. There's a little gap here. It's all kind of hanging together. But just imagine, and I'm starting to see this happen, what, you know, when the national office provides more support, listens, focuses on you, and we leverage your ideas and the successful programs you have and take those things to scale. When all those Lego pieces are securely connected, they don't have those what we call middle lines with my son, where, you know, everything breaks apart if you don't intersperse the pieces properly. Maybe not that many of you have 6-year-old boys, so forget it. But imagine, I'm imagining and I'm seeing this Lego construction. You can picture with Star Wars ship, those are things we do, is coming together. And I see those pieces kind of clicking in and meeting all of you and talking to you over the next few days. I have a feeling we'll have a more solid structure when we leave. So I think the recent regional meetings and some of the conversations and actual work around looking towards regional coordinators and just giving more, decentralizing our activities is an example of how the board and staff are starting to really look to the field and the resources that are here in this room and the knowledge. And I just happen to look at Charity, and she's a big part of that. Thank you, Charity. This is the nice thing about it, being able to see you all out there. As I was preparing for this gathering, the board meeting, and thinking about what to say up here, I called Martha Davis Kipchak, who is a governor in the upper Midwest and was a leader in Milwaukee for many years. And many of you probably know her. And Martha was on our search committee, and Martha's someone I like and trust and feel like has a sense of slow food in a very deep way. And Martha spends her days, every day, her day job, working on equitable community food systems in Milwaukee, in inner city Milwaukee, and is very, very wise about the challenges and the opportunities to bring people together around food. On the weekends, she makes cheese and is starting a small food company. And Martha isn't here because she literally does slow food work 7 days a week, every week. And she would love to be here, but she couldn't. And she embodies, and I think her day job and her weekend job demonstrate slow food's uniqueness and the inextricable link for her between creating equitable food systems and making cheese, and that she doesn't really want to just do one or the other. So I want to acknowledge the hundreds, if not thousands, of folks who aren't here today because they are working on our behalf, for all of us, with all of us, on these same issues, who can't be here. I want to do a particular shout out to the farmers in the room. I know we have farmers. Are there farmers in the room? Yay. And as you imagine, most of the farmers who are in our world and the farmers all around can't be here because they're in the fields. At least the farmers in Oregon are working as fast as they possibly can right now. So I want to remember them and think of them. When Martha and I were talking, I asked her about biodiversity because it's something we're talking more and more about, and it's something obviously that is at the core of slow food. And I said, how does biodiversity fit into your work, your day job, and your weekend job? And this led to a conversation about diversity of all kinds, plant, animal, ethnic, human, cultural, as the principle of resilience in every community. And biodiversity specifically as not something frivolous or some notion that is sort of plopped on top of our daily lives. It is at the core of obviously, as I said, plant, animal, human, cultural. And then it made me think, well, Terra Madre, which is the most, I think what resonates with so many people around the world and in the US and our Terra Madre farmers, why is Terra Madre so, why does that have such power and such ability to inspire and keep us going in those off years and make us see the links in our own communities? And it's because exactly what Terra Madre represents, the plant, animal, human, cultural, traditional diversity that is what is the resilience in the core, I think, of our planet. So the conversation with Martha was useful, and I sent her my speech in advance, and I gave her the opportunity to correct it, and she did not. So just so you know, if you check with her. And she sends her greetings. So I've talked a little bit about what sets our movement apart, what makes us exceptional. And I think we have a need to communicate that particular contribution and that heart and soul that is You, the network, And I think we're finding our voice to do that. So that's sort of the exceptional piece. We're also totally unexceptional. We're like any nonprofit who has the responsibility to our members, to our donors, to our partners, to use the money we receive wisely and as strategically as we possibly can. We have a responsibility to articulate our goals and what the impact should be from those dollars. We have the responsibility to build a sound business model, and that basically just means with those resources, what are we going to do that sustains us and furthers our mission? And we have a responsibility to be as strategic as we possibly can to leverage the resources and the volunteer hours that you put in a human capital sense every day. And we have the responsibility to be humble in this huge movement and to listen and to learn and ask questions really at every turn. We still have some hard questions to ask, but I think the core, the soul is obvious. And as I've said, it's you, it's in the room, it's what you do. We as a board also have the responsibility to hire executive directors. And I think I can say we found an exceptional one. I'll take that. I think we found an exceptional leader to navigate our fairly unique and critical role. Richard told a story during the interview process about a community garden he helped start with others here in New Orleans, I think probably not too far away from where we're standing. And he talked about ultimately how that patch of ground and what and who grew out of that changed the way in which he wanted to seek change in the world. And that story, I've said this to him before, was a pretty pivotal moment for me and my part of being on that search committee, to realizing that Richard is slow food, probably the way we all think we are slow food. I'm not sure he knows it yet, but I think that I can say for any of us who've worked with him for any time at all, realize that he is. He is. So this conference, this convening, this is really to celebrate you. It's to offer some moments of inspiration and reflection and make those countless hours that you do at home on email, rallying volunteers, making phone calls, schlepping materials, cleaning up after everyone's gone, doing that work. I was a chapter leader for many years. I want this to be a little bit of a giving back, to stepping back, to have a holistic view, a big picture, to realize our potential of good, clean, and fair communities as you are doing, but in aggregate, and thinking about what that can mean here. And you, in fact, are generating much of the content of this conference. So while it's giving back, you're also continuing to give. And I think in aggregate, I hope this conference will be a little bit what I think of as a Carlo or a Paolo moment. Many of you have probably had that experience where you've been working hard, but you're in this, you hear Carlo, you hear Paolo, and Gary's phone is ringing. Sorry to call you out. When you hear those talks and those speeches, and you have that sense that, yes, there is so much potential, and we really can change the world. And you hear them, and you leave, and you go back, and you're like, yep, I can do this. And it carries you through for a while. So I hope that these next few days can provide that injection of inspiration and joy and confidence that we have a very pivotal role to play, and why slow food is important, and right now. Thank you very much. So I did okay on that back and forth to the paper a little bit. So Richard, please, I'd love to welcome Richard to the stage now.
Good morning and welcome to New Orleans. This is a city that I hope you find over the next couple of days is particularly comfortable with the pursuit of pleasure. But you know, it's a real place. It's got real challenges: poverty, violence, obesity, and an extraordinary legacy of colonialism. And you know, as a result, real purposes shape most actions, even the ones that seem really frivolous. And for instance, Gary talked about our second line parades, made infamous, these famous second lines made infamous last week with a terrible shooting not the first one. Well, the second lines are these amazing emblems for especially resilient communities. They're really at the core social aid and pleasure clubs. When you think about that in America, social aid and pleasure. We're not supposed to do that together. But historically, these have served roles as mutual aid, like insurance, long before the advent of the social welfare state. These are extraordinary institutions. So, in some ways, this city gets joy and justice sort of at its core. And for that reason, I'm so glad, that we're here and that I can invite you to this city that, that I adore. Well, immediately after Katrina in 2005, Slow Food had our back. Chapters all over the country organized red beans and rice tastings and farmers markets that helped to give a sense of comfort with comfort food for New Orleanians in exile. Many members from around the country, Slow Food members, purchased boxes of Louisiana Satsumas, Ark of Taste product, from farmers who had ample product, but no market. And then Slow Food New York City and several Bay Area chapters welcomed our roaming wild harvest fishermen who were marketing products so fresh they were still wearing their white boots. The shrimpers, not the shrimp, wearing their white boots. But they really welcomed us into their arms as we were seeking new markets. And while I still love New Orleans, I now reside in Brooklyn to take the helm of the organization that has long inspired me, Slow Food USA. I'm lucky to get to work with such a talented team who I think you saw and I hope you get to meet over the next couple of days. Of course, we're going to need all the talent we've got to dig us out of the recent troubles. Our very public disagreements have cost us dearly. Membership has sagged, a weak value proposition, confused messaging, and of course a crowded field of new organizations, many of which we helped to start and to continue to support. These all contribute to problems we have. This too is occurring internationally, where membership has also sagged. And yet, there's some really hopeful signs of coordination and rebirth. We're really delighted to have with us Elisa and Serena from Italy, who head up Slow Food International and the Foundation for Biodiversity. With them, they have brought a special message from Carlo Petrini, who is unable to be with us here today. So on that cue, I'd love to bring you over to Carlo.
Care amiche e cari amici di Slow Food USA, voglio inviare a voi, riuniti in New Orleans, i miei più fervidi auguri di buon lavoro e di affettuosa amicizia. Da poche settimane sono rientrato da un viaggio in Colorado dove ho potuto vedere la straordinaria vivacità del nostro movimento in quello Stato e nello stesso tempo intuire che in ogni angolo degli Stati Uniti i nostri volontari, i nostri convivia, le nostre realtà territoriali stanno operando per un cambiamento profondo del sistema alimentare e sono in totale sintonia con lo spirito e le idee che il nostro movimento realizza in ogni parte del mondo. Dopo lo straordinario congresso di Torino, la realtà di Slow Food si è allargata in oltre 170 paesi del mondo e questo per noi è un motivo di orgoglio e anche di apprezzamento per lo straordinario impegno che migliaia e migliaia di volontari realizzano in ogni angolo del pianeta. Nel congresso di Torino abbiamo scelto di lavorare nei prossimi 4 anni su 3 obiettivi strategici che vorrebbero avere l'impegno di tutti, perché così come è vero che noi siamo forti a livello locale, è altrettanto importante che il nostro spirito e la nostra fraternità ha una valenza planetaria. E quindi i 3 obiettivi che ci siamo dati sono obiettivi che rafforzano la nostra realtà a livello mondiale, ma anche a livello locale. Il primo obiettivo è di aiutare i nostri fratelli africani affinché la battaglia contro l'land grabbing non li trovi soli e isolati. Quindi sostenere nei prossimi 4 anni la nascita di 10.000 orti nelle scuole africane, nei villaggi africani, negli ospedali, in ogni forma di vita sociale, nelle grandi metropoli anche, è un'impresa che deve vederci tutti impegnati, perché quello è una lotta concreta contro una forma di neocolonialismo che è molto più violento di quello precedente. Il secondo obiettivo è la ragion d'essere di Slow Food, rafforzare su tutto il pianeta l'arca del gusto, quello straordinario elenco di patrimoni che in ogni angolo del mondo la saggezza e la sapienza di milioni e milioni di donne e di uomini hanno saputo catalogare, preservare e lottare perché questo patrimonio non si estingua. È quindi un lavoro di catalogazione, di denuncia, di informazione che noi dobbiamo fare perché la grande arca si riempia non solo di prodotti italiani o europei, ma di tutte le parti del mondo. Su questo siamo impegnati e vogliamo fare in modo che tutti sentano l'orgoglio di condividere l'importanza dell'arca e trasmetterla alle generazioni future. Il terzo obiettivo è un obiettivo che abbiamo già intrapreso, vale a dire già al Congresso noi abbiamo lavorato perché i delegati non fossero solo i delegati della rete di Slow Food, ma quelli più estesi della rete di Terra Madre. Terra Madre non esisterebbe senza Slow Food. Slow Food con Terra Madre ha cambiato la sua identità e si allargherà e si diffonderà sempre di più. Quindi Slow Food e Terra Madre sono a tutti gli effetti membri di una stessa famiglia, membri di un stesso progetto e quindi noi dobbiamo nel modo più assoluto fare in modo che le strutture organizzative siano troppo burocratiche, troppo accentrate. Più c'è condivisione, più c'è allargamento e più la nostra idea si svilupperà nel mondo. Il prossimo anno Slow Food festeggerà 25 anni di vita e Terra Madre sarà arrivata al suo 10° anno. Quindi è molto importante che ci prepariamo a questa scadenza del 2014 e coscienti che la strada percorsa in questi 25 anni è stata straordinaria, ma lo sarà ancora di più se continuerà a regnare al nostro interno quel sentimento di amicizia e di fratellanza che supera anche le difficoltà e anche le ambasce che molti di noi avvertono in questo sistema di crisi globale. L'unione della nostra associazione permetterà di superare anche questa crisi. Voglio infine congratularmi con tutto il board di Slow Food USA per lo straordinario lavoro che stanno facendo, che hanno fatto in questi mesi. A Richard voglio augurare buon lavoro, nella convinzione che noi abbiamo trovato in te, caro Richard, la giusta intelligenza e la giusta passione per diventare veramente un coordinatore valido per la crescita di Slow Food in tutto il continente americano. Un grande abbraccio, lasciatemelo fare alla mia carissima Alice. Cara Alice, Chez Panisse risorgerà più bello e più forte che prima. Non solo perché tu lo meriti, ma perché è un luogo dello spirito e come tale è il luogo di grande umanità. Vedrai che anche questo inconveniente servirà a rafforzare l'affetto che noi tutti abbiamo nei tuoi confronti e nella tua impresa. A voi tutti, cari amici, un ringraziamento di cuore per quello che state facendo e ricordatevi che l'appartenenza a Slow Food vi possa dare grandi gratificazioni, vi possa rendere felici. Prima di tutto è che ognuno di voi nel suo impegno con Slow Food possa realizzare un pezzo di felicità. Senza di questo il nostro movimento non avrebbe ragione di esistere. Innanzitutto devono essere felici i nostri volontari, i nostri dirigenti, coloro che spendono il loro tempo per realizzare questo grande progetto di vita. E con questo augurio io vi saluto e voglio dimostrare a voi tutti i miei più grandi sentimenti di fraterna amicizia e di affettuosa solidarietà.
Wow. Well, in a moment of clarity, our local, national, and global priorities, they are aligned. The call to action is for us to help board 10,000 ARC items, grow 10,000 gardens in Africa, and create 10,000 food communities. These mirror the priorities you've already expressed with your deeds. Here in the U.S., at Slow Food USA, these last few months we've been very busy at work retooling our operations to serve you, our leaders, better. In case you never see these things, here's our revenue. Our expenses shed light on an organizational model that is not sustainable. We must change our business model. Now, despite falling membership, our reach may be greater today than at any point in our history. When you combine our reach of social media, the texts, the Facebook posts, etc., this was sort of unthinkable to reach over 1 million people a decade ago. Now, we may sound like a broken record. We are actually making progress to improve the digital interface that helps members find their chapters and chapters find their members. To be blunt, we've made some terrible decisions with our technology. Now, I know this from my own organization, how difficult it is to navigate the technology. It is taking us far longer to untangle these problems than I could have imagined. And I'll get to this in a little bit. But meanwhile, and speaking of technology, how slow food for us to have a conference where we have no internet. As in the Super Bowl, New Orleans delivers when it comes to technology. It's actually kind of cool. Meanwhile, you are leading the way with practices. Gabby from Orlando, where are you? I know you're here. Yeah. Your chapter has purposefully utilized high-ticket events to subsidize low-ticket events. This is a novel means to welcome and serve different demographics. How many of you all are doing that? Yeah, see, that's really cool. Now, Spencer from University of New Hampshire, are you here? Yeah, cool. Slow food chapters are, as I think we'll be coming to refer to as slow food youth, has met students where they are, in places where fast food flourishes. Where's this? The university cafeterias. They've been developing tools that help students navigate food choices. Now, when I look around the room, I can see we are endowed with age and wisdom. And yet, how do we attract and cultivate leadership among the youth? Are we making room for them in our leadership teams, locally and nationally? When it comes to excuse me, I need some more water. I'm in New Orleans. And it's not vodka. When it comes to race and ethnicity, our leadership profile is still very narrow. It's still very white. There's no question about it. Now, these numbers do represent progress. However, we can and must do more. This morning, we will begin a journey together to navigate beyond our comfort level, to learn how and where we can take risks with others, with people of color who also want good, clean, and fair food. If we do nothing, we'll become less and less relevant and less reflective of our shared aspiration of good, clean, and fair food for all. Now, in my meetings with local chapters, I'm gaining a much better sense of where you are succeeding, with or without direction from the national office. And this is something that, Carlo made reference of. 70% of you run school gardens. This is incredible. 1,000 gardens in Africa mirror our gardens in America. They provide a platform for taste education and biodiversity. They are also changing the cultures of the schools. The other cluster of activity, in some ways, really surprised me, although I don't know why it should have. This is the work we all do in grassroots philanthropy. You all are doing grassroots philanthropy. We may not have called it that. We may not have recognized this sort of important contribution where you're investing in the future of food in creative and not so small ways. $236,000 in 1 year is significant. And I suspect, based on the chapter reports that I've read, it's probably an understatement, because a lot of the programmatic money would also comprise grassroots philanthropy. So the question for us at Slow Food USA is, how can we help you make that effort more effective? How can we leverage resources from other places? And this really raises the issue of success. What does it look like? What does success look like? Well, here's where I, quite predictably turned to 17th century naval history to provide some perspective about where we are, right? I mean, I knew you were expecting this. Well, in 1688, the Spanish Armada was too big to fail. Too big to fail. Though it wasn't immediately apparent to its foes, the Invincible Armada, with its huge scale, huge ships, was actually showing wear and tear. The fleet had difficulty maneuvering through heavy weather, and 15% of its crew had succumbed to cholera. In short, the Invincible Armada was weakened. So when the Spanish took on this second-rate nation, the English, didn't even have a proper navy, for God's sakes. All they had was these amazing small merchant ships, and some of them weren't even ships. Well, the Armada fell prey to one of the greatest feats in asymmetrical warfare. The small and poorly organized fleet of English merchant ships defeated the vastly superior Armada. In one short moment, small became the new big. This navy came to be known as Queen Elizabeth's Pirates. And I just want to say that we too are like pirates. We are pirates. We sail nimbly in and around the large ships of the industrial food system, today's Armada. Like pirates, we are drawn to mischief. I know I'm drawn to mischief. And we practice democracy. Democracy is at the root of our belief in food sovereignty. So when the question arises, what is our role? Are we on a rescue mission? What is our relationship to the folks on the big ship as it's taking on water? And how do they perceive us? Well, many of the good ship stewards, because there's lots of good people on this big ship, I mean, we know that, and they're trying to reform it. But they look out across the bow of their ship longingly at the horizon, and they see all these pirate ships. Sometimes we're sailing in formation, sometimes we're not. Some of them fly under our flag. You can just make out the snail right at the horizon. Others are not flying the snail. But we must help those who are sailing with us to sail, maybe in formation, at least to sail safely, to find those shipping lanes in the turbulent waters. And at the end of the day, we must find ways to anchor together. Of course, we make room for more crew in our ships, the ones who are, of course, on the other big ships, looking out, hoping that there'll be room for them when we're ready for them. But we shouldn't overbuild our ships. We don't want to be, in essence, rebuild the bureaucracy and the clumsiness of the large system. And we should also welcome the biodiversity among pirates. We must reach out to other food communities. So when it comes for fixing leaks on today's armada, the industrial food system, I don't know, whether it sinks today or decades from now, I don't think it's our future. I think we're growing our future. I think we are our future. Now this is important. Though we may be pirates, ours is not an adversarial role. We do not seek out enemies or barricades or participate in that long, dreadful march of self-loathing and misery. After all, we're slow food. We're the revolution of everyday life, which is so much more enjoyable than the long march of misery. I know it. We meet people where they are, and we help them and us navigate these turbulent waters. We care about the joy and the justice. We care about biodiversity, social inclusion, animal welfare, the dignity of labor, and of course, pleasure. We find those who also care, and together we act on these concerns. To grow our movement, we cultivate leaders to become ever more effective. This weekend in New Orleans is one such act of cultivation. To grow our movement, we find these leaders and we connect to others. You know, and as our leaders, we really need you to look out and find out who are the emerging younger leaders. Who are those who've never connected to us? And finally, hold on, I lost myself. I'm usually off the cuff, but if we did off the cuff, we would actually talk our way through brunch, and I don't think we want to do that. So, in keeping with our convivial desires, of course, at the end of the day, we want to connect with others. We do so on the ground, regionally, nationally, and globally. I mean, after all, as Carlo described, that's what Terra Madre is for. So, these are our programmatic priorities. The Arc of Taste is a call to action to map out our natural and our cultural assets. Whereas campaigns in the past may have come to you late in the day, we are committed to provide longer leads and more behavioral change opportunities when we forge this collective action. This way we can, hold on, I need glasses now, it's sad. Oh my gosh, it's so sad. My gosh. Here we go, I found myself. Convening. You know, convening defines our work locally and globally. We're considering how and where and how big and when do we convene nationally. Not as an internal conversation, but as an external one. This is no small feat to take on. So how we learn from Terra Madre, from Slow Food Nation, I know that I'll be reaching out to you to get input and guidance as to how we convene nationally. And we are deeply committed to investing in you to serve as champions for social inclusion and racial equity. I know this work isn't easy. I mean, I'm a white guy in New Orleans. I know how difficult it is to navigate this work. But it is so important that we join with others. And we will continue to grow our slow food gardens. And the school gardens, the school gardens, the Snail of Approval, the slow food suppers, these are all innovations that you first experimented on the ground in your chapters. Have you maybe sort of hot houses of innovation? In many ways, that's what the chapters are. In isolation and protective confines of the chapters, you're able to really innovate. Our purpose nationally is not to sit heavily on our local chapters and on your work. Rather, we're here to help best practices flourish, to move them from the hothouse as seedlings to the field as healthy crops. So today, I'm here to tell you that we have a pledge. And we may have several pledges throughout the weekend. It's not a pledge drive, but we will have pledges. And we're pledging here at the National Office to serve you better. In 2014, we will redirect $5 per member back to you. Renewing member, new member, it's all the same. None of the sort of a third, new member thing that was really kind of complicated. With a minimum of $100 per chapter, small chapters need not worry that they'll be receiving that $8 check, as with the case with the previous system. Now, as for larger chapters, this actually adds up to a substantially larger redirection of resources than in the past formula. And I'm sure we'll be discussing this in much greater detail in our membership conversations. We will publish an annual calendar so that you can plan out your year in advance. Now, if your pen is ready, Terra Madre 2014 in Italy begins October 23rd. We will share this in other means, but we do have some means right now. In August of 2014, a new youth event called Food Stock will take place in Palenzo. And also in 2014, we will resume the publication of a print magazine for members. We will publish it twice each year. And finally, I would like to share with you some progress that we've been making with the database. Now, I think resilience in New Orleans does come to mind. The resilience is in part that we're operating off of my cell phone, which is a hotspot. And maybe some of you are climbing on that hotspot and slowing us down. But from our website, our team has found that it is actually quite difficult to find our members. 12 clicks through is probably not the best way to navigate you through. And with our complex database, and we're not the only ones who struggle through complex databases, I tell you. What we have done is we're trying to make the whole database system clear. In the meantime, we're doing some fixes that will at least begin to show you changes that you'll begin to see every couple of weeks. And hopefully by the fall, we'll be able to have a far more user-friendly system for you. So from the website, the homepage, there'll be a link of leader resources where you'll be able to log in just once, which would be good, just once. And it'll take you to where you can download your up-to-date members from your chapter. Now, this is, of course, like doing it on dial-up, so this may take longer because we don't have internet really here. So this is working off our phone. So you've got an Excel that, it's still working off of the Blackbaud. It updates very slowly, so it'll be an update that I think will come every day. But if you sign someone up in the morning or someone up at night, they may not show up for another day. But I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there. And thank you for the sometimes very gentle, sometimes not so gentle input. We know that this is our core, is our members. And we've got to really change our membership proposition, and we're getting there. Well, while our situation as an organization is urgent, we must remember that which Carlo Petrini always tells us. You must act slowly, slowly. And I think our version of that may look something like this, which is to slow the fork down, you know. I think we've got to remember that we move forward with humor, with love, with passion. But we're a radical organization. We want to radically transform our lives. And we've got to do it with a certain amount of humor. And we're also going to do it through storytelling. And I know I hope to change the baby on board sticker on my vehicle with one that looks like this. Well, what I'd love to do is, why don't you all stand up, look around, introduce yourselves to folks around you if you don't know who you're with. And I'd love to invite two heroes up onto the stage. Ted. Well, I'd like to introduce to you our guides in this journey that we'll be taking together. At the far right of the stage is a fourth-generation Mississippi family farmer, Ben Burkett. Thank you. There is a full bio on Ben in your program. He is the president of the National Family Farm Coalition. He really helped navigate me through rural America. And he told me, not in the same language to slow the fork down, but I remember when we were working with the Greater New Orleans Foundation, and he said, God, they want to do it right now, and things work a little more slowly in rural Mississippi and rural Louisiana, and we've got to respect that. We've got to respect the dignity with whom we work. And Ben took that risk almost 20 years ago with this crazy idea that farmers should actually come to New Orleans and sell the fruits of their labor. And the look we got often was like asking them to come to Baghdad or Beirut. The fear of the city, the lack of familiarity. And everywhere I went, people said, well, have you talked to Ben Burkett? Ben's the one you got to talk to. And when I finally found Ben, he said, yeah, I've been looking for you for a few years. Because the connection between urban and rural had broken down. And I think it is now stronger today than probably in a generation. So, and then to my immediate left, and your, sitting right here, is Ted Quandt, who's the executive director of the Toomey Center for Peace Through Justice at Loyola University, an extraordinary institution that links community know-how with university resources, and really brings as much into academia and the ivory tower as the ivory tower shares with the community. And Ted has this extraordinary ability to weave his way in and out of different worlds and make people feel safe and navigate through very, very difficult challenges. And I think you'll see in his bio the kind of complex, confrontational, organizational settings where Ted and his partner, Michael Kane, who's here, and I'm sure Michael, unless he's at the gym, is here. Because that's usually where I'd run into Michael, was in the park or in the gym when he's thinking through the next training. But Ted, many, many years ago, when I started the garden in my neighborhood, and I saw there was an opportunity to link with rural and with farmers, and Ted and I pitched it to the president of the university that we want to do this crazy thing, is have a farmer's market based out of a university. And for Ted, this was just a continuation of the important work that he's done in building community all over the South. And I've learned everything from these two about food and urban and rural and the dignity of ordinary people defining their future. And I'm hoping that you can start taking us on that journey and set the tone for work we'll continue today and tomorrow together. So Ted Quandt and Ben Burkett. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Richard, and thank all of you all coming to our beautiful city and bringing all the wonderfulness that you're bringing. I met Ben quite a few years ago, but just in connecting since we've been here, realize our connections go back a lot further. Back into the 70s, and when I was doing some organizing in Mississippi, and we were in some of the same places and so forth. So it's been a pleasure. I want to thank Richard and Slow Food for inviting me to have this great opportunity to talk to Ben and share with you his life and wisdom and opportunity for us. I heard Carlos say, the more we share, the more we grow. And I think Ben's life is an example of that. I saw the film, The Unlikely Journey of a Small Farmer, and it is an unlikely journey. Ben comes from 125 years of history of farming, and his great-grandfather, great-great, homesteaded the land, and Ben has been on it since. And it's led him from a small farmer to national, international prominence as a leader and advocate for affordable, quality food for all people, sustainable development. From Petal, Mississippi, and Indian Springs Co-op to the United Nations, where he spoke and advocated. And travels all over the world, bringing knowledge and taking knowledge. And I heard one of the persons said, you know, Uncle Ben come back from these trips, and he says, let me tell you what I learned. Let me tell you what we can do with what I learned. And he shares it right away. So Ben, I wanna say I saw the video. Your life story is awesome. A story of an individual and his community rooted in history. I would like to begin this interview with what this history of your family in 125 years, 100 years on a farm means to you.
I'd like to say thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to be here and my good friend Richard and Ted to learn more about slow food. I know a little bit about it hearsay they say over the years, but I'm very motivated and moved by what you all are doing. But as Ted said, my family been in farming now for a little over 125 years. My great-grandfather was fortunate enough to receive a homestead from the United States government, 164 acres that was given to him not long after the Civil War in South Mississippi. And this is land that was Native American after the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit, when most of the Indians, all the Indians, but not quite all, moved to Oklahoma, opened up this South Mississippi, which is less than 100 miles from here, for settlement. So I'm often trying to wonder how 20, 25 years after the Civil War, how the African American in this part of Mississippi was able to achieve land ownership, which was very important. And that farm is still in my family today. It grew from 164 acres, now it's 294 acres. And every generation added a few acres to it. My mother and father bought 40 acres in 1938 for $300. And now I doubt $300 would buy a half acre of that 40 acres. But land is very important to any movement. And if the founder of Slow Food Carlos, when he said about the things in Africa, and I had the opportunity to I've been to Africa 29 times, I believe. I lost count after 25. And I always learn things that I can use back and how it relates to what we're doing in this region. It's stated I'm a farmer in Mississippi, but probably 7% of what I produce is sold in this city. So my family have been bringing produce to New Orleans, to the French market for years. And then the French market declined from a market to a tourist trap. That's when the Crescent City market came along. But the whole generation of 4 generations, my daughter will be the 5th generation if she decides to stay in farming. She'd be farming one day and out the next day. But it's been a rewarding life.
One of the things rooted in this history, 125 years, in Mississippi, with all of what Mississippi means historically,
Right.
There came a great migration in the 1960s. There was one before that, but in the 60s there was. And you left home.
I was intending to leave home.
And your daddy got sick and you got called back.
Right.
And you decided to work the farm just for
1 year.
1 year. And then you would, move on.
To Chicago.
To Chicago. And, but you didn't.
I did.
You had a couple of good years and then you hit a bad year. And then you stayed through the bad years and the struggle and frankly facing racial discrimination, the struggle of black farmers, people going bankrupt. You could have gone up north. You stayed and fought. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay. Yeah, I had a finish from a land grant institution with my degree in agriculture, and I decided wasn't no jobs. And everybody in my generation was leaving the South at the time. We were going to Chicago. I don't really know why, but everybody was, so I was gonna go. But my father took to come back and help cotton with the crop, harvest cotton, and I made good money. I like this farming. I believe I stayed. 3 years later, cotton prices went to almost to nothing. Hurricanes is always affecting farming here. So I stayed. But in my community, though, there was farmers that always had worked together. So we organized a cooperative, in Spring Farm Association, out of racism, basically. We found that the buyers for watermelon was paying the white farmer one price, and was paying the black farmers another price. So to keep from accepting that, we said we would organize ourselves. We would buy our own truck, and we would take our own watermelon to Chicago. And that was in the 70s, 75, 78, but the cooperative itself had been organized year before. Out of 8 farmers in that community, Indian Spring, they organized 7 black farmers and 1 white farmer, organized the cooperative, and the cooperative today is still going well. We have 33 members. We have a packing and grading facility. We have several trucks, and we're working, as Richard so stated. The only problem we have in our cooperative now, we don't have that other generation of young farmers coming along. But it grew out of the racism and the pricing that the cooperative was organized. And it's been a struggle to keep going, but it's still going well. And I contribute that because where we are located at, it's a need to work together. No matter what color it is, all the farmers in that little area tend to work together generation after generation after generation.
And I think this also connects to the history and your roots. You made a statement that no one can do this alone. We need each other. And out of this fight against racism and for sovereignty and control of your life, formed a co-op, hooked up with those Chicago clubs that are Mississippi clubs all throughout Chicago.
That's true.
And we're able to do that. And just a little bit more that I think was important, at least I thought it was important, that in Petal, Mississippi, there's a church. And that church is the same church that was also built like 125 years ago,
True.
that his family attended and that he has attended all his life. And there's the Masons,
Large
which,
hall.
which is a key fundamental institution. And there was the church, the Masons, and the co-op
Right.
became the three institutions that you are a part of, all three. And the rootedness of how it is a self-help. Richard mentioned the second line social and pleasure clubs. Could you talk to us just a little bit more about how that formed you to who you are, that kind of spirituality that comes out of that kind of relationship?
Most definitely. You know, in the African-American community, the church is the center of everything almost. And in my community, the church, actually on my father's side, the 3 acres that the church had came off of 40 that I own now. And the church wants the other 37 acres today. And the church is the nucleus there. And by the way, my church, this will be our 3rd year with a garden. We started off with a ½ acre, then it went to 1 acre. This year the church have a 2-acre garden. And it evolves around young people that get in trouble in the school. They have to do their community service in the garden. The co-op, the Freemason Hall, all this is in the center of this community. This community now have 92 houses, or roughly 350 or so people. And there, when I was growing up, it was 40 or 50 family farmers in that community. Now we down to 8 in that community. But it still is based upon land and traditional farming in that area. Most of the farmers have diversified farms, such as my farm. I have some animals, I have trees, I grow vegetables, and I do grow commercially soybean. But those 3 entities right in the center of the community, and the church continue to play a part. We have for a rural setting, we have a basketball court, we got tennis court, we build a walking track where you can walk around for the community. But I see very few people use it. And it's a ½ acre lake that they walk around. I think I'm the only one that'll swim in it. I can't get young people to swim in that lake yet. But that's the center of a community. And then most rural communities in Mississippi and Louisiana are centered around certain entities. And that basically it's those 3. And it brings people together. And like in the slow food, food is something that we all have to have. That's one common denominator. Now, where we get it from, you got 4 or 5 corporations want to control the whole system. But I think it's a local thing. It's a food sovereignty. It's a right given to have high quality, fresh food. And in my community, there's several homes that I know of still cook 3 times a day. So I'm never without food.
Let me, I'm looking at how deep these roots go and how tied it is to this place. And now I'm looking at somebody with this roots who's all over the world. How many times you say you've been to Africa?
29.
29 times to Africa. I saw where you were in China, you were in the Philippines, you were all over the world you are called upon. And you serve on all these commissions and sought after. So my question is, how did you evolve from Petal, Mississippi, co-op, Masons, the church, to an international leader in affordable, sustainable food kind of food for everybody movement?
That's a good question. I have no idea. I contribute to just being blessed. This is a blessing, honor, a privilege to be able to, growing up in South Mississippi. When I went to Alcorn State University, I didn't know how to turn on a shower. I never seen a shower in my life, you know. So I came from I want to say a sheltered life, but a life of poverty. I wouldn't say that neither, because we always had plenty to eat. Might not been what we wanted, but we always had plenty to eat. We had a nice home, but to evolve to where I'm at today, and I contributed to just a blessing. I just been in the right place at the right time. My good friend, former Secretary Mike Espy, when he ran for the House of Representatives, the first black to be elected to the House of Representatives of the state of Mississippi, I worked along with him in his campaign. Then he became Secretary of Agriculture, and I followed him. I had opportunity to go many places with him, and I just come to be where I'm at today. But I contributed back to, I consider myself now as a farmer, a small farmer. That's all I've ever done. I've been fortunate. I never had a job. I never filled out a job application, because I always had a vocation, farming. And I try to impress that upon my daughter, and I got 4 great nephews that grew up on the farm, very intelligent. They're all about farming, but I don't think they're gonna farm because they went to Mississippi State and one got a degree in electrical engineering, one got a degree in chemical engineering. But I let them know that this land here would always be here. So if you go to New York as an engineer, you can always come back.
Let me ask you this. Like, you don't know how you made that leap, but I'm gonna ask you it this way. Like, what characteristics, values, philosophical approaches do you have that would lend themselves to this kind of success, or that other people who would want to say, how can I be more like Ben? What are the things that he would say if you're talking to your nephew and you're trying to tell your nephew, look, son, let me explain to you a couple of things. What would you say?
Right. I would say you have to be real to yourself. You have to understand that we all in the world is basically one. And no matter where you come from, no matter where you're from, Africa, Europe, or China, whatever, the basis of human being is relationships. How we relate to one another, how we treat one another. I can feel for farmers in India from Mississippi because of the land grabs going on in that area. Even the farmers in China, you know, they evolved in this situation where you just take people's land and do what you want to do with it. You have to feel real in yourself, and I try to impress that upon the people that are helping me. I'm able to be here now because of my great nephews. They in the field farming. Hopefully they come to the market Saturday. I don't know. They came Tuesday, but I depend upon them. So you have to have the trust. You have to have respect. You have to have love for what you want to do, and those that are committed to the ideals like slow food. You have to really, it has to be a part of your life every day. You get up with these ideas, and you live with them, and it's not something you just have to think about. You automatically gonna do it. You know, my great nephew, when they were small, I tried to impress upon how to treat everybody and how to be respectful and everything. If you look at this shoe I'm wearing here, this is a honorable shoe in the black community. This is a Stacey Adams Madison. Only people wear these shoes in the black community is elderly men. So my nephew, we walking down the road, I said, you got to respect me, because he said, I ain't. I said, well, if you live long enough,
Get you some Stacey.
you'll have a pair of shoes like this.
Now, you in Mississippi,
That is true.
and you're a small black community, and you're trying to elevate for yourself and for the rest of your community. And, well, just point blank, Mississippi got pretty racist history. And
We still have
pretty
problems.
racist history. And so I guess where I want to go with this is two things. One, how you navigate to have white allies, your ability to deal with racist people who, I'm not saying they all hard-hearted Ku Klux Klan type racists, but the kind of racist people that don't know that they're racist but are acting in a racist way. And how have you been able to, in all the positions that you've had, galvanize the kind of ally support connections that we're talking about here, and move that thing forward? And I think one story you told me was about the soybeans.
Okay.
The dirty soybeans.
Well, Mississippi race is a contentious issue. Today, we make up 40% of the state population, African American, but all the elected officials on the state level in Mississippi are white males. And I was telling Ted, and this was in the 90s, I was a soybean farmer. My soybean had a broken shield in it, so I cut soybean. And the soybean had a lot of farm matter in it. So I took my soybeans to Loosedale, to Lapperouse Grain buying station. They wasn't bound, which I know the beans had a lot of farm material in, but he had been buying beans like that. So I just took the soybeans back home, elevated them off my truck onto my neighbor's truck, which happened to be a white farmer, which is a member of the co-op. He take the same beans to Loosedale, they bound. So Ted, I was telling Ted that that's an everyday thing you learn to live with. But you learn how to work with it. You don't let that impede you or slow you down to keep moving forward. And I can tell several stories like that over my lifetime, but I always learn something from those type of experiences. You know, you have to learn that that's just a fact of life in Mississippi for the time being. It's changing. It's going to take quite a few more years. But I had opportunity, and Ms. Lynette Gilbert was a part of this, to serve on a commission, 3-year commission on why Mississippi just can't get any better. Why we always number 50 and everything just about. You name it, we number 50.
Only thing Louisiana had going for it was Mississippi.
Mississippi. Louisiana, Mississippi, we battle for number 48, 49, and 50. So as you learn and generations come together, the young people, generation, 2 generations behind me, it's much better. But I'm afraid they're losing that connection to the farm, to sustainability, to how to make a community food solvent, how you can make a given area where you're not dependent upon other exports and imports for your total survival. You know, these companies like Monsanto and Cenex, and where I buy my seed from, I've received this vegetable magazine every month. I've been receiving it for 35 years. My daughter, 33 years. I've been receiving this magazine before she was born. Genetic modified vegetables. It was showing where in the future you're going to have potatoes, sweet corn, cabbage, tomatoes, all of it, where we can plant the crop, spray one chemical on it, control all the weeds. Now that technology is already in the soybeans and corn and wheat, but it's slowly being moved. Do we really want that? That's the question we have to decide. But the marketplace will say, if I want to sell yellow and zucchini squash to U.S. Food Service, they're going to say I have to plant this variety. Else they're not going to buy it. So what that put me as a farmer? You know, there's the kind of question we're going to have to deal with in the future. On my farm, I grow a lot of traditional varieties of watermelons and okra. They said the okra seed I plant on my farm can be traced all the way back to a village in West Africa.
Wow.
So now, I'm trying to believe that story. So I'm in a village in South Africa. I mean in West Africa, in Senegal, on the border of Guinea-Bissau and Senegal. And I'm looking at the okra plant there. And I'm looking at the one I plant. And I'm looking at the okra pod. I said, just might be a little truth to this story.
Let me go, stay in some more with this, how you navigated the two things, because these big questions, genetically modified food, things that we have in common no matter what race, whatever, they're things but yet we stay divided up and there are certain things about expectations of others and privileges and so forth. With the market umbrella, Crescent City Market, because it seemed to me that was an unlikely coalition in a way that some of this cross-racial and can you talk a little bit about elements of that or struggles within that
Well,
that were able to be dealt with?
The beginning there, Crescent City Farmers Market, and when Richard, we decided we're going to start this market. It was some hesitating about would farmers come. And I knew they would come if we ever get it started, and we had farmers that came as far as from Alabama. We got some now that's coming from almost from North Mississippi, which is 300 or 400 miles away. And we had African American farmer, we had Vietnamese farmer, we have a Hispanic farmer, but that brought about a community that showed that things could be done. And we have had our ups and downs. I think at the present time on Tuesday market, we're the only African American vendors there now. But that comes and goes with the production, with the crops, and with this. Hurricanes is the big player in this part of the country in farming. It's not a matter of when it's coming, it's a matter of when it's coming. So you have to do everything planting with that, keep the hurricane in the back of your mind. In Mississippi too, we have what's called Mission Mississippi, which would bring together thousands of families. So many black families, so many white families, and they have to go spend 1 year following each other. And this is something been going on now for 20 years. So those types of things. But I think on the real level, in your local communities, how you relate to people in your community, the marketplace to me is still one of the most unrelenting racist place to deal with.
And so, given that, and given that you've also, I guess I want to stay in that space for a minute. Here you are in a space with people that you have to work with. They're human beings. They come from a different perspective and background than you. And you're trying to have equity and inclusion and equality. And there are assumptions of privilege and entitlement that get in the way of that. How have you been able, or what is the experience of where that has not worked, where it has worked? Because many people out here, from what I understand, have tried to make cross-fertilization things with other communities. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And we know, that ain't just like talking about it.
No, it's not.
And it can fall apart real quick. And so I just would like to get some of your wisdom about just that reality and how you navigate it and positives and negatives of that kind of struggle.
Well, it always comes down to one-on-one relationships. You have to build trust, you have to build respect, you have to have a love for what you're doing. And it comes down to the mere fact that, as I first stated, we are all the same. So you run into situations where it don't work. You don't hold that against anyone. You don't fault yourself, but you don't fault no one else for it. It just didn't work. So you try something new. If that don't work, you try something new. One of the biggest struggles we have now in Mississippi is getting our product in the local school systems. And these school systems are designed in such a way, I think, they don't want local produce in the system. You got to go through the school board. You got to go through the superintendent. The dietitians in the school don't want to do it because you're going to add more work to what they're doing. And most of these schools, they don't do much cooking in no way. It's cooked somewhere, it's brought on. I said that to say that's one of the challenges we face. And racism is a huge part of that because the state of Mississippi is on a one purchasing block. You got 104 school districts. They all buy as one. So if you just want to single out one in the Delta that's 99% African American, you can't do it.
So that takes you to your role on commissions and boards and politics, because you got to change structures and policy as well as these one-on-one relationships. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you've been successfully able to change some of those things.
Well, we tried to change the bill in the State House this year to change that whole structure with the school. Also, we had some movement to change the laws as it relates to cooperative in the state of Mississippi. They passed the House, they passed the Senate, but our new governor have another committee that has got to get through. We didn't get through that committee, but we're going back again. In the state of Mississippi, there's only one that I know of, slaughterhouse where farmers can bring their animals and be slaughtered and then get USDA stamp where you can sell in the farmer's market. This facility is up for sale. We tried to get the state legislature, this is our second year, to put up $600,000 to buy this facility, where these farmers will have somewhere to process the animal. Again, we get everything approved. You know how you get approved but no appropriation? So it's just this constant battle of survival of small farmers. And these days, it's getting even more, not necessarily just race, it's the small versus the big. And the rules and regulations that I have to farm under now as a small farmer is the same as a big farm in Salinas, California. I got to have the same three best practice, good food handling, hazard certificate on my farm. I think that's not fair. I don't ship all over the country. And what I grow, if the customer in Crescent City Farm Market, if they eat it and get sick, they'll see me next Tuesday. They can point me out and say, you sold me a bad watermelon. And what I said, if I did, I'm gonna give you 2 and your money back.
Yeah. So for slow food and for this movement as a whole, while we may be divided up, race and class and these other socially constructed identities that are interfering with our cooperation, our common cause and common need is the same thing. And in the fight to make those changes in Mississippi and any other place, there's a handful of folks with power that use these other divisions to keep getting elected and to keep us squashed. And if that analysis is correct, and I think our time may be running slow, running out, thinking about this organization and its power, its relationships, its connection, its visions, its values, and these realities that we're facing in the radical side of trying to make things better for all, what wisdom, advice, ideas, what would you say to the organization? If they could listen to you and do what you say, what might you say to them?
I would say go back home and continue what you already doing. Let's build up on the past and looking toward the future. I think the slow food movement, I'm a part of Viva Campesino, which is a worldwide movement of peasantry farmers. 100 million members, wow, we say we have. And I've been fortunate again, I serve on the Food Sovereign Commission of National Viva Campesino, and the last time we met was in Spain, in the Canary Islands. And I had the opportunity to visit with those farmers there and had the relationship. I didn't know where we was at, you could stand and see Africa, how close that was there. But they have this whole problem there of people trying to sneak in to Spain. And I'm saying it shouldn't be that way, you know. We should have the freedom to move, the freedom to work together, the freedom to create a local economy, not just on food, but a sustainable economy. And when you look at that, you're talking about energy, you're talking about the food, you're talking about jobs, you're talking about education. One of our co-op members put solar panels on his house and farm. And he creating so much energy that his energy was going to Mississippi Power. But the law in Mississippi said Mississippi Power ain't gonna pay you for that energy. So they done come put a new meter on his plate. You know, so he subsidized Mississippi Power. Look like if we all had solar panels, then we could, you know, we wouldn't have to pay Mississippi Power every month. I got 2 irrigation wells, and whether I turn them on or not, it's gonna cost me $100 a month if I never turn it on, or if they put that meter there. But all I'm saying, we gotta look at an area, and Rich is good for saying that when you look at an area such as New Orleans, that's a little bit of Mississippi, it's a little bit of Alabama, and a little bit of Texas make up this region. If you look at the food shed region, I would say. So you look at it from that standpoint that this whole region could work together, cross racial lines, cross status lines. You have the rich, the middle class, the poor. We could all work together. And that means the poor got to give up a little something, and the rich got to give up a big something. And the middle class got to help both ways. And that's how you change the whole system. And I think it's a big, big movement now because of the work that you all have done. And I had fortune to speak out in California the other week. And I said, ideas that's real big and doing well in other parts of the country, when it reached Mississippi, I know he'd have made a change. So when Slow Food have a chapter, it might have a chapter in Mississippi. And when we have people that's really concerned about the environment, global warming, some say it's not for real, but I've been interviewed by the University of Florida on climate, southeastern climate or something. They want to know how it was when I first started farming, how is it now that I'm farming. So they're doing a whole lot of research on the effect of the climate all of that have to come together. The whole for it to really work. It can't be this slow food here doing what they want to do. Viva Campesina over here doing something else. And we all doing the same thing. But somehow or another we ain't made the connection. And with this new technology, and my daughter got me one of these iPhone 5. You know, I got it here now. I'm just amazed. I can just say, find slow food chapter in New York. Baby. I don't even have to put it, I can talk to it. That type of technology have to be used in the work that we're doing.
Well, I want to thank you, Ben. I'm looking at Slow Food International, all these places, all the places that you have been from Petal, Mississippi, around the world, connecting and so forth. And I'm looking at how we look at global things, and then I'm looking at the local piece. Like there's a report called Place Matters, and it's about zip codes. And there's a building in New Orleans that has 2 zip codes, because the house is on a corner that actually, the building has 2 zip codes. One zip code is the Garden District, and people live there to be 80 years old. The other zip code is Central City, and they live to be 60 years old. Another zip code, they live to be 85, and another zip code, they live to be 56. And those are the deserts where they don't get the fresh food, you don't have the affordability, you don't have the thing. And it's like the world in microcosm in a neighborhood.
That's it.
And so everything you're doing from the world scale to the local scale, slow food intersects with the environment, with the air, with food, with culture, with enjoyment, with all of these things. And you kind of personify all of those kinds of connections.
I agree with you. It's all connected. Again, on my farm, at this very moment, I have a 2-acre demonstration, research demonstration with Auburn University, Mississippi State University, Alcorn University on what type of crops that we can grow on farm that would pull the carbon out of the air. And we grow these crops and we put them in the ground. This is my 5th year doing this research. But I try to explain to them that they're going about it the wrong way. So they want me to plant these crops, spray Roundup Ready. Plus, and it got to the weed that been escaping on. They come a month or so ago, Roundup Ready Plus on this research plot. To me, that's defeating the whole purpose. If you're going to use these type of chemicals, the research, you're not including the air quality and water, what the whole research was about. So we have to change that whole thing in these land grant schools. I'm trying to impress them. I noticed they wanted the worst field on my farm with weeds and things. I said, I can do what you all doing without the chemical. Just let Mother Nature grow the natural and plant the corn and you.
They wouldn't make no money that way.
I won't do that. But I said that the importance of education, what I'm getting to, is a very important thing. Formal education, transfer of knowledge. Someone told me I have a lot of stuff in my head and I need to be writing it down, but somebody else gonna have to write it down. That you can pass on to the next generation. How to farm without the use of chemicals. You know, we've been farming like that when I went back home from college, I brought the first 5-gallon can of Treflan to my father to control weeds and grass. I was taught that at the Land Grant Institution, that this is the way of the future. But 20 years later, I figured out that wasn't the way of the future. So that would make me, once you get on that chemical treadmill, it's hard to get off. You know, even now, the Roundup Ready soybean, the Roundup Ready cotton, soybean, corn, the weeds are coming through now. Even after you spray the, we got what you call a red root ragweed, pigweed. It's resistance. So you got to go back and reformulate. You got to make it a little stronger. So you can't continue that. It's not sustainable. But the whole thing of how we merge all this together, I think education is a very important part of that.
Do you have any last words to this august organization to close out this interview?
I thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to be here. I admire the work you all are doing, and I would like to become a member in a chapter in the state of Mississippi. Thank you all.
That is a really tough act to follow. I will do my best. You know, just really holding true to that idea of connecting food, farming, family, and community to, you know, really changing the way that we want to live in this world. And my name is Javon Sage. I'm the Associate Director of Network Engagement at Slow Food USA. So as folks from New Orleans to Italy may know, I am not normally a mic and PowerPoint gal. Usually my voice can carry all the way through the back, but I really wanted to make sure that we could display the bright spots, our chapters here today. So first things first, I would really love for everyone here to give a round of applause to those new chapters who have joined us in the last year. I mean, really, like the work that every chapter is doing, creating those innovations, creating those connections, and really building community is the core of our work. And so my job here today is to really shine a spotlight on the driving force of slow food in the United States. With an eye towards convening and really making sure that, you know, chapters and leaders and national are connecting and really learning those best practices. This is since September, since our meeting in Louisville last year. We've had convenings all across the United States. In the Southeast, we brought together 3 different regions together, in addition to Paolo and Elisa from International. California is really working on an initiative on how we can all work together statewide. The Northeast, what are our best practices as leaders in this region? Rocky Mountain, where they had an opportunity to host Carlo and to do work with Slow Money. The Pacific Northwest, talking about the work that's happening in those chapters. And New England, like coming together in a snowstorm to really get to meet each other and say, hey, this is the work that we're doing, and we're really excited to do it together. So we have Slow Food Temecula Valley. The work that they're doing is using gardening, cooking, and taste education to engage handicapped and disabled and high-risk youth around good, clean, and fair food. I mean, that's amazing work where you're connecting the work that's happening in the soil to the work that's happening in the classroom. Slow Food Chicago, right now, their Preserve Garden partnership is entering its 4th growing season. And this is working in partnership with 3 other community organizations to provide fresh produce for neighbors, for volunteers, and for the community. Slow Food Central Valley, New Jersey, they lay claim to being the first group to actually start winter green markets in this region. And they've been doing that for the last 8 years. And one of our newest campus chapters, Slow Food New School, is connecting with students around education and around a shared meal to do that kind of education in one of the fastest cities in the United States, New York City. How do we slow that down on a campus level? And Slow Food Charlotte, the work that they did co-creating the Friendship Gardens is a network of 35 gardens that provides produce to the city's Meals on Wheels program. Really amazing. Like, how do you build those networks? They're doing it. And Slow Food Maui, I really wish I were there. Through Taste Education, they honor the growers and producers using part of the funds that they raise at those events towards community giving programs. So doing that grassroots philanthropy. And Slow Food Madison, in partnership with the Madison Caribbean Association and the Goodman Community Center, they cook up fresh meals directly from the food that's available that day in the pantry. So really like figuring out how do we do fresh, delicious, healthy food with the resources that we have. And those are just some of the highlights. I mean, really, this is a fraction of the work that each and every one of you are doing out there in the community. So I'd like to actually end this by having everyone just give yourselves a round of applause for the work that you're doing. And next up, we have brunch, which I know they are setting up right now. And I want to check in with Jenny. It's going to be right behind this wall. So they're going to actually be spreading this for us. And we're having a really delicious gumbo brunch. And I know folks are probably hungry and ready to hit the bathroom. So now is your time to make that happen. Again, thank you.